as a professional actor, the question that you will get asked most often is, how do you learn your lines? I think you'll soon come to realise that actually we don't learn lines. If you're trying to learn lines, then that is what your hummingbird, if you like, focuses on. And it makes it impossible to do anything else. If all you're thinking about is, oh, what's the next word, what's the next word, what's the next word, then that's what dominates your performance. And it's going to be pretty rubbish. So what I've said to you before is that everything that we do as actors, in my opinion, should be defined by the concept of what does my character want. And believe it or not, that will help you with remembering lines. So what does that mean, Mark? How do we apply that? I find it's a 3-step process. If you're lucky enough to be given rehearsal time, and if you're doing television soaps, you won't be. We'll come on to cover that in more detail as well. But if we are in the theatre, say, we are generally given, roughly speaking, in commercial theatre, 3 weeks to rehearse. Now, how I like to do that is that we would spend the first week with the book in our hands, with the script in our hands, reading it, moving around, thinking about all the things that we were thinking about with character and imagery and everything else. Bearing in mind that gradually these things will start to come as second nature to you, so you won't have to focus on them to make them work. But you are, during that process, learning exactly what the structure of the story that you're trying to tell is. Okay, you're learning it from an imagery point of view, you're learning it from a character point of view, you're learning it from a physical position on the stage point of view. And just the act of reading words out loud, using the sound, using the muscles moving, actually helps to put them into your subconscious as you're learning them. So that's the first stage. Walking around, reading the script out loud. Now the second stage, the second week, if you like, in this rehearsal process, is to put the script down. Okay, completely forget about the script. Now you've already spent a week working on the script, so you've got a pretty good idea of where your character is meant to be, right? So you can spend the second week just seeing how you work with that information that you've got from the first week. Okay, so don't try to remember the lines, and don't worry then if you get them wrong. For instance, in our poem that we're working on at the moment, instead of trying to say the lines exactly as they are, you might say something like, because you know it so well, you might say, I knew a young man that was in the army, and before he went in, he was so happy. You know, he was the life and soul of the party. He didn't have a care in the world, and he was one of the greatest people to be around. But when we got to war, the conditions were so bad. There were bombs going off all the place. We were infested with fleas. First of all, they gave us rum to drink, but then that ran out. And it was constant pressure. And this bloke couldn't cope with it, which made things worse for all of us. So, think about that. When you're at home and you're celebrating the war and that we've won and everything else like that, just think for a minute about what it was like for us. Don't glorify it, because there was no glory in it. Okay, so back to me. So, that is a kind of improvisation that I've done with that script because I know that I know the story and I know the information that I want to get across, and I know how it's. So we've done 2 weeks now. We've done 1 week where we're actually script bound and we're repeating the words verbatim. We've done 1 week where we're not even thinking about the words, we're just thinking about the story. And sure enough, in the 3rd week, what we do is we try to merge those two, okay? We take those two and put them together.
Quick pause there. If you want 14 free lessons with personal feedback from me, just write feedback in the comments below. Right, let's get back to the lesson.
Now, by the end of it, we should arrive at something which is called DLP. So you are dead letter perfect. And now this is critical. If you've got a script and it says cowed and you say cold, they're two completely different things. Good authors know exactly what words to put into a script. Okay, Shakespeare is the best at it, and we will spend lots and lots and lots of time looking at Shakespeare. Not necessarily because you want to go on to play Shakespeare, but because Shakespeare gives us such a good grounding of the way that words relate to each other. Okay, so really good writers put the right words there. Really good composers put the right music there. Really good computer programmers put the right code in there. And if you play the wrong note, if you put the wrong code in, then the whole thing it changes. So as an actor, you have to learn the right words. Okay, so this is in the 3rd week. You go down and you get into the habit now of not being good enough, because good enough isn't close enough. You've got to be DLP, dead letter perfect. You've got to get every single word right, because that is, I mean, and it's not just Shakespeare. It's not just old-fashioned stuff. I know we've spoken about this before, but, Peaky Blinders, that script is written now and it is so brilliant. Each word is exactly the right word. Okay, and as an artist, as the actor, that's your job to interpret that, as it would be if you were a pianist to interpret Chopin or Shostakovich or anyone, So you've got to get the right notes, and the words are our notes. Okay, so that is how we start to learn things, which is great when you've got 3 weeks to rehearse. Now, the problem is that sometimes you don't have any time to rehearse, especially if you're on a soap opera, when you're shooting 3 shows a week. You can't possibly have any time to rehearse, so you've got to find a way of learning lines really, really, really quickly. But if you've got into the habit of doing what I've just suggested, which is to learn the word, read the words, spend some time internally digesting them, play with the words, know what your character wants, know what the words mean, and then merge those two things together, you'll find that, like any muscle, learning lines becomes much easier for you. So much so that when you are doing a script in a soap opera, and bearing in mind, you're probably filming 3 different stories at any given time. So you might be going to film one scene from one episode, then off to a different unit and film a different scene from a different episode, back to another episode that's neither of those, and then back to a scene that took place before the first episode the first scene that you did in the first episode. So it's all very confusing, and so you've got to find a way of doing that. So what I'm saying is, now at this stage, start to do that with any piece of work that you've got. I want you to spend the first bit of time that you've got with it going through it verbatim, saying it out loud, making sure that your body knows the positions that it needs to be in to say those words. Then spend the time to learn what those words mean and what your character wants and those things that you're going to say. Then put them all together. And as I say, you will find that actually over time that you will become proficient in it, and it will get easier and easier and easier, so much so that you can literally look at a whole scene before you're going to shoot it, spend 20 minutes or so looking at the scene and then you will know it sufficiently to play it in a soap opera.